What's up guys, and welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. Today, I'm going to be going over a few different weapons that you will definitely want to make sure that you have before going into next season, especially for things like the Master Mode Vault of Glass and the Grandmaster Nightfalls, now that Bungie has revealed what champion mods we will have going into Season 15. Some of these weapons are legendary and some are exotic, but my goal is to provide a very quick look at each weapon type that the mods will be covering and give you an option for each element. On top of all of that, I will be highlighting exotics that may offer unique interactions with the champion mods or just be good picks overall to use these champion mods with. But before we begin, if you like this video or find it helpful, remember that a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated and it does go a very long way to help out the channel. Check me out on Twitch too if you feel like it, my link is in the description, and anyways, let's get on to the video. The official Destiny Twitter account has revealed the anti-champion mods for Season 15 a little bit early. We're going to have Overload Bow, Unstoppable Pulse Rifle, Unstoppable Sidearm, Unstoppable Fusion Rifles and Linear Fusion Rifles, as well as Anti-Barrier Auto Rifle. It also appears that we will have Overload Sword based on another tweet from the official Twitter account, but that was not shown in the screenshot, seemingly as a form of Bungie having a little fun messing around with the community. I'm going to go over each category and list out what I think are the best weapons for next season from each type. I'll try and give a Solar, Arc, Void, and Kinetic recommendation from each category, as well as let you know about any exotics that may be potentially worth using for your Grandmasters or Master Mode raids. Starting with the Overload Bows, really any legendary bow with explosive head will work great for high-end content. For Kinetics, I absolutely love Accrued Redemption from Garden of Salvation. For Arc, the Arsenic Bite is a great option, and if you need Void, go with Imperial Needle from the Battlegrounds. It cannot get Explosive Head, but Frenzy also works really well for content involving Overload champions. For Solar Bows, your only option currently is the Tyranny of Heaven, which only drops from the Last Wish raid, but again, Archer's Tempo with Explosive Head is going to be your go-to role for this thing as an anti-overload weapon. For exotic bows that work well with overload, I would say to go with Le Monarch and Tiku's Divination. Tiku's with the Catalyst is able to put out a lot of splash damage and ramp up with its stacking perk, as well as make Warmind cells with the right mod setup, but do keep in mind that Warmind cells are extremely likely to have a nerf announced for Season 15. However, Le Monarch is the one that is especially strong. It is able to apply a poison effect, and the Overload Bow buff also applies to ticks of this poison effect. This poison effect can also be applied to a large area if you land a precision hit with the poison stacked arrow, and as a result, you're able to keep multiple Overload champions from healing by only hitting one of them. I'd also like to give an honorable mention to Trinity Ghoul, but in my opinion at least, in a large amount of content involving champions and sometimes the contest modifier, the Lightning Rod perk can become a little bit harder to keep rolling, and as a result, I do not think it is as good as Tiku's Divination or Le Monarch. For Unstoppable Pulse Rifles, however, my recommendations for Kinetics are going to be the Messenger with either Desperado or One For All, but other choices like Sacred Provenance with Rapid Hit and Kill Clip, or the curated role of Chattering Bone are really good if you don't want to touch Trials. For arc damage pulse rifles, I would recommend either the Gion 7 rifle or the 3rd Axiom. Both are fantastic and either one will work. For Solar, I recommend a good Stars and Shadow, and for Void, I recommend getting a Grid Skipper with Frenzy. The only exotic pulses that really shine in high-end PvE with the Unstoppable mod are, at least in my opinion, the No Time to Explain and the Outbreak Perfected. No Time to Explain's Ammo Refund perk is fantastic on its own, but if you have 3 members of your fire team running something else, like Outbreak Perfected, you can actually stack the Siva Swarm pretty effectively and use it to increase your damage to champions as well as general enemies, since you can gain damage off of your teammates' Siva stacks. For anti-barrier auto rifles, I would also like to go ahead and make a little bit of a disclaimer. Since they are going to be the only weapons capable of getting anti-barrier this season, it is important to lock down a good one. However, typically when something like this happens and there is not a good long-range anti-barrier option, we usually fall back on Ariana's Vow. So I'm going to give that weapon a mention here, since despite the fact that it is not an auto rifle, it will probably still be the best anti-barrier weapon next season, simply due to its range and built-in auto-loading holster perk. However, looking at actual auto rifles, we have this season's favorite, Chroma Rush, but I would also keep an eye out for False Promises and the 7th Seraph Carbine as well as Tiger Spite, which is currently the only kinetic auto capable of rolling with Frenzy. However, for the False Promises and the 7th Seraph, depending on the changes coming to both Warmind cells and auto rifles in general, these could be really, really good. We will just have to wait for more sandbox announcements coming in the weeks before Season 15. For Void auto rifles, I would recommend either Gnawing Hunger or the Garden of Salvation auto rifle, Reckless Oracle, although Last Wish's Age-Old Bond could become better if high-impact autos see a buff. For solar autos, the Europa auto rifle Arctic Haze is probably best, but a good roll of the Summoner may not be bad, however, it will have to be an old one, given that it hasn't been available from Trials for quite a while. For Arc auto rifles, I would recommend Shadow Price, since it can get Disruption Break, which is amazing for anti-barriers. However, Arc Logic is also good, seeing as it is currently able to also roll Frenzy, which is fantastic for high-end content. For exotic auto rifles, I can really only recommend the Hard Light for anti-barrier, since it can deal with all of the different elemental shields as well as barrier champions, although I don't even think in that respect it's necessarily that good. Its damage output just isn't that great for taking your exotic slot. For unstoppable sidearms, there's not many options, although I would say that you should probably just use a pulse rifle or fusion rifle next season. If you have to use a sidearm, however, I really like High Albedo from Europa, and I love brass attacks with rapid hit and one for all. And the vision with one for all also can put out a lot of damage. For solar legendary sidearms, your only choices are Drang and Fool's Remedy, neither of which I can really recommend for high-end PvE. However, you could use Devil's Ruin with its built-in unstoppable rounds if you want to use a solar sidearm. I also recommend using something like Cryothesia with a stasis build if you really do like sidearms, since it will be able to take advantage of your aspects and fragments. For the Unstoppable Fusion Rifle mod, however, my recommendations are going to be to use Plug 1 with Reservoir Burst, Cornered, or Backup Plan for arc damage, use Null Composure or Zealot's Reward from Garden of Salvation for void damage, and then go with either Dreambreaker, Cartesian Coordinate, or a good Trinary system for solar. For linear fusion rifles, Tarantula is arc, Corsair's Wrath is solar, and Threaded Needle is void. Those are the only 3 legendary linears currently in the game, so they're all you're going to have to pick from. I like Threaded Needle the best, but if I need a solar or arc linear next season, I will probably just grab either Sleeper Simulant or Queenbreaker, seeing as they're not that bad, and I really do not like Tarantula, and Corsair's Wrath is okay at best. For exotics, do not forget about Arbalest, since it is special and goes in the Kinetics slot, as well as having a Disruption Break and its exotic perk, making it do a much more damage to elemental shields. But also consider thinking about using Telesto to trap the path that an Unstoppable may try and charge you from. Merciless could also let you do damage to larger targets now that it's had its exotic perk bug fixed, and you could also use Bastion, but you don't need the Unstoppable mod to use this, since Bastion already has Unstoppable rounds intrinsically available on it. In my experience with Bastion, it's not great, but at least there are no other kinetic fusions for it to compete with. Last but not least, we have to talk about Vex Mythoclast, Jotun, and 1000 Voices. Vex Mythoclast is currently awful, but if it were to receive a good buff, it may at least be something worth looking at with Unstoppable rounds, and Bungie has confirmed that it is receiving a buff very soon, which I assume to be Season 15. 1000 Voices, however, is what I'm the most excited to try out. This gun is a ton of fun, can cause a lot of damage, and so I'll definitely run it with some Unstoppable Fusion Rifle mods, and its status as a heavy fusion with large explosions makes it unique and potentially very, very powerful going into next season. Jotun is also able to get stuns at longer ranges than most normal fusion rifles, and it comes with Shield Disorient, which will almost certainly be really good in strikes like the Corrupted that have a lot of solar shields. Keep in mind, the Corrupted is very likely to be one of next season's Nightfalls, even though that is not confirmed yet. On top of all that, Jotun's tracking is just the cherry on top of the cake, making it a pretty good choice, at least in my opinion, for unstoppable fusion rifles, without having been able to test it yet. Lastly, assuming that we are indeed receiving Overload swords, I'd recommend Falling Guillotine for any Void sword you need, Negative Space for anything solar that you're going to need, and either Bequest or Night Terror for any arc swords. Titans, you can probably keep using Crown Splitter, and Hunters, you guys could probably do Quick Fang with One for All. Warlocks, I'm sorry, but I don't think Eternity's Edge is that much better than Falling Guillotine for Overload Sword, but given that Eternity's Edge can get surrounded and is able to do solar, may have a potential use, although I'm not convinced yet. If you want to do any weird stuff with swords, however, there's always using either a Soulless Scar with Chain Reaction or Vorpal, or you could use Temptation's Hook with Vorpal Weapon, And for exotics, you could try using Black Talon with Overload, but I'm not sure how well it interacts with the sword mod. It will definitely depend on how that mod behaves. If it's good, I'll have a video on it later. And last, the Lament will probably be a really good sword too next season, but since it has intrinsic anti-barrier, you almost certainly will not be able to activate the Overload sword mod on it. So as a result, it's mentioned here with the other swords, but this is a barrier option, not an Overload option. However, that's all I have for this video, so if you liked it or found it helpful, a like is always appreciated, and if you want, click subscribe as well as the bell icon down below for notifications whenever I make a new video, and check out my Twitch channel linked down below if you ever want to catch some live streams. There's going to be a lot more Destiny streams there after Season 15 releases, and as always, thank you for stopping by and watching, and have a great day.